Blackpool Pleasure Beach is gearing up for its biggest shake-up in years, with new rides confirmed, old favourites disappearing, and new ticket options that could save you some money. Let's dive into the details. Right, so let's start with one that seemed to slip under the radar. In fact, I've only seen Darren from Judventures mention this one, nobody else so far, but the park has announced a new ticket option. Now, I got excited and thought this meant no non-rider was coming back. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet. Still keeping fingers crossed that that happens one day, because they did have the non-rider season pass last year, or for this year. But this one is that they are making some changes to the on-the-door price. Basically, it will reduce throughout the day. So I believe from 1:30 until 3:30, the price will decrease every hour until it gets down to £34, which is basically what it is to book in advance. And I guess this one's a little bit weird because there are many days where the park shuts around 5 o'clock. So £34 for an hour and a half, it's not a good deal. On the flip side though, there are days where the park is open twilight and the late night riding. On those ones, if you're in Blackpool and you turn up at 3:30 and then you can just get the same price you would in advance, then that makes it a much more valuable proposition. So yeah, I think this is a good move from the park. They have said that they are the only park in the UK that does this. And it's great to see. So obviously they are willing to make some changes to tickets. As I said, non-rider's the next one. Let's hope that happens. Now the next thing we've got is that obviously the park announced 5 ride closures at the start of this season. Now, it was a little vague when they first announced this because they basically said, we are closing these rides for 2025. Now that did not necessarily mean that they are getting removed completely. It could very well be we're closing them for a year for money saving, you know, and then we'll bring them back in 2026. We at least know that is not the case for one of them, because the carousel, the gallopers at the back beside the big one, have now left the building. There are photos floating around of it being sold onto the travelling circuit. So the ride has been preserved and you can still get on it, just not at Blackpool. And I have to say, it's not a ride specifically that I'm going to be fussed about because I never ever went on it, but as many people have said, the ride itself wasn't the big thing. There was the organ and the music that was part of that area around the big one. So yeah, I'm curious what this means. I suspect I'm there in a couple of weeks, and I guess when I get there, there's just going to be this empty kind of building where it used to be. Presumably that'll come down at some point, but maybe something else has gone in there. I don't know, you never know. In any case, as I say, it's the ride itself I'm not personally fussed about. It's more the atmosphere that it generated with the organ. So of course that then obviously means, well, what are we getting with these other ones? Is Eddie Stobart going to get removed? Is the Alpine Rally and the other carousel going? Obviously, Red Force is still in bits. It's still a reasonably new ride. It's only 10 years old, so that could easily be sold or moved to another part of the park. Although, personally, I'd rather they got rid of it because I wasn't the biggest fan. But in any case, there is definitely some movement there in terms of the old ride lineup. And so that brings us on to what is new and what is changing. Now, the first thing is that, now they teased this a couple of weeks back, and when I was at the behind the scenes, Andy did say this in person, but they've now confirmed at the season launch that there will indeed be some new additions to Wallace and Gromit. Now I was curious at first when they sort of teased that, because I think I've said it before, I thought this could just be a giant Norbit outside the shop. But they have basically said there will be at least one new scene inside the ride. And I don't know when that's going to happen, but they've said it will be this season. So at some point, we're going to go on Wallace and Gromit and find something new, which is fantastic. In addition to that, they've also basically confirmed that the launch pad will be a spring launch, which I think we kind of knew, right? I mean, the scaffolding is coming down, which is great to see, but they still have to put the gondola back on, they have to do testing and commissioning and all that stuff. So shouldn't be too long, but it should be ready long before the summer, so that is great to hear. And then the other one, of course, is the reimagining of the river caves. Now, details are still very low on this one. Again, when I was on that behind the scenes, Andy just went, don't ask me about river caves. We actually went behind the river caves on that video, so if you haven't already checked that out, I'll put a link at the end of this video. But yeah, you couldn't really see much. I don't know how much has started already. We don't know what level this reimagining is going to be. I mean, is it going to be to the level that they did with Valhalla, where they spend millions of pounds on it? Is it just a lick of paint and some new models? We do not know. But in any case, I suspect this is probably going to be a fairly lengthy refurbishment. This is not confirmation from the park, they haven't said anything. I wouldn't expect to see it until 2026, but Nonetheless, it's great that it is not being removed. Right, so that leaves us with the headline thing here, right? The thing you're probably all watching this video because of, and that is that the park has finally confirmed that this gyro swing that we all spotted last year is indeed happening. Now, I know many of us were like, well, they had a loan and then they paid it off a few days later. That's a good thing because the park is still getting this ride. They have confirmed that it is Project 2026. And the other fantastic news is that it is the large gyro swing, which we do not have in the UK, right? If you look at Maelstrom or Cyclinator down in Poultons Park, they're the smaller versions. They're good fun, don't get me wrong, I enjoy those. This thing's nearly double the height. It is 138 foot tall at its highest point. It can seat 40 riders, has the lap bar restraints. It just looks fantastic. Now, I haven't been on one of these. So many people talk about, is it Loki over in Europe? That is fantastic. So we are definitely getting this. They have also confirmed that it is going where the Bolodrome is. We all know that there's big walls up around that right now. The stairs have been knocked down already. Believe there's some asbestos found in there, and that's where the delay has come from the demolition. But in any case, you know, this will be erected probably throughout this year. It could be a winter thing, but it's not going to open until next year. Now, they've said they're going to give us some more details later on. All we know right now is there's this sort of teaser advert, which I'll play in a second, that has a snake in it and just says Project 2026. So I'm curious what this snake theme is going to be and what the name of the ride will be, but let's take a look at the ad. Right, so there you go. I have said for a while, I've been very optimistic about Blackpool and that they have a bright future. They are definitely pumping money in, which I think we all know is what is needed for a park to survive nowadays. You know, we've all seen the sad closure of Oakwood and Flambards. And, you know, I said it in my recent video that I'm nervous about Blackpool as well, but I also said they know that and they've got their head screwed on. You know, they are throwing money at investments and they've said this is a transformational period for the park. So I am very excited about the future for Blackpool and I'd love to know your thoughts. What's your thoughts on all the changes that are happening? What are you most excited about? If you have enjoyed this one, hit that like button and do consider subscribing. And also, if you haven't seen that behind the scenes video, take a look at it up here. You need to go on this tour. It's fantastic.